Hi, I'm Dr. Amberleigh Carter. I'm a doctor of metaphysics and an alternative medical practitioner, and I'm the host of the Ask Amberleigh podcast. Welcome to the Biohacking Congress in Austin, Texas. And we are here with over 30 speakers, and we're talking about science and all of the new up-and-coming health hacks for the biohacking world. And we are here in Austin, but there's also one in Miami coming up October 20th through 22nd, 2023. So go to biohackingcongress.com for those tickets. So welcome, Kashif Khan of the DNA Company.
Pleasure. Awesome to be here with you.
Yeah. So the DNA Company, let's just dive into that. So what is the concept of it? What is the DNA Company doing for the world?
So, truly for the world.
Yes,
right?
So that's why I was like, for the world.
Yeah, we believe that, there's the big world problem, which is healthcare sucks, right?
Yes.
And our piece or contribution is that genetic sequencing interpretation was very disease-centric, right? If you have a rare genetic condition, you'll get some help, you'll get identified at least.
Right.
And then maybe there's some treatment there. But the big problems of diabetes, chronic disease, aging, female hormone issues, infertility, etc., weren't being touched because there's no direct gene that equals those problems. It's a lot more complex.
Okay.
And so the work we did was said, if this genome is our human instruction manual, every cell reads this book to understand how to do its jobs.
Yes.
We need to interpret what jobs actually equal those problems.
Okay.
Right? And so it's a question of, here's a red flag in the genome, you don't do X properly. Here's the epigenetic habits then, after knowing that will either lead you to the problem or take you away from the problem.
Okay.
So we're making it highly, highly actionable and away from the disease-centric stuff to more preventive, reversal, slowing down aging, optimizing performance, and that's what we've done. And that's what was needed, and now it's sort of people are flourishing through it.
Yes,
yeah.
Definitely. It's so needed right now because everyone's taking supplements and doing these biohacking things, but how can you get so to the core root of what is making up our blueprint, which is our DNA? So it's looking at the genetic expression of those things. So I know people talk about the genes load the gun, but the environment triggers it, right? Or pulls the trigger. So from your perspective, what's the impact of epigenetics with your genetic hardwiring?
So, that was exactly the problem, right? And the problem was that you're told something like, for example, the BRCA gene gives you an elevated risk of breast cancer.
Right.
Right? And what's the answer? Okay, I'm going to go cut something off. Prevention, right? That's the prevention.
Right.
So you don't understand why the disease is happening yet. You have some elevated risk or propensity, that's your profile, and you will cut something off. If you don't know why, how do you not know it's going to pop up somewhere else? So the why, getting into the epigenetics, is not BRCA causes breast cancer. BRCA is a tumor suppressor. So God forbid you get cancer, it's supposed to go fix it.
Okay.
You actually need it.
Wow.
If you have the wrong version, a not so good repair tool, you don't survive cancer as well. It doesn't cause it. And most clinicians actually don't understand this yet, right?
Yeah.
So you don't have the good repair tool. Why did you get cancer to begin with? So some women are more estrogen dominant. We can determine genetically in your hormone cascade what kind of hormones you make. More testosterone, more estrogen, more toxic, less toxic. So some women are more estrogen dominant. Some women who are estrogen dominant then make a toxic metabolite before the menstrual cycle. That is highly inflammatory.
Okay.
Some women, not all, right? Some women don't have the detox system to clear that metabolite. Now, if you have this perfect storm of all three, dominant, toxic, don't get rid of it, month after month you're making this inflammatory insult, head to toe, causing inflammation, causing damage to your cells. Even then you're not sick, right? On top of that, 85% of North, and I'm going on a rant here to explain
No, I love it.
Right?
Keep going, yes.
85% of North American women will be on the birth control pill for 5, 10, 15 years. Putting more estrogen into that funnel that leads to inflammation.
Exactly.
Right?
Right. Hormone
Disruption, Teflon-coated frying pan, chemicals, pesticides, cosmetics, not understanding that you're, again, dumping it in that funnel, more estrogen toxicity, more inflammation. Even then, doesn't equal breast cancer yet. When you get to the menopause age, and this is why most breast cancer happens in and around that time, not all, but majority of it, you no longer have a menstrual cycle to get rid of that monthly load of toxicity. So you have the genetic profile, You now have the epigenetic habits that you were talking about that take you over the edge, the wrong input on that profile. And now the biology of, I no longer have a menstrual cycle. So I still make this stuff, this toxic stuff. I'm still taking these pills and doing these things, increasing the load. What is my body going to do? Well, it doesn't want my organs and my vasculature getting inflamed and damaged, so it goes and stores it in fat. And where do women have fat? In the hips and the breasts. Right? And now all of a sudden you have this material, like glands, ducts, like for milk delivery, that were not designed as cellular structure to deal with that type of inflammatory insult, that get damaged, cellular degradation, and that's where the cancer starts, right?
Wow.
That's when BRCA is supposed to get to work.
Okay.
This is where it comes in and fixes things. But give me a 5-year-old girl, and I will test her and tell you this is what her profile looks like, and you can then understand exactly what her lifestyle, environment, nutrition habits should be to prevent that problem from happening, and exactly what inputs will cause that problem.
Wow.
Right? Now name a condition, a chronic disease, a concern around performance and athleticism. We can speak to it like this because we've understood the root cause.
Okay.
Right? That's empowerment. That's prevention. That's disease reversal. That's not that we're getting away from the symptom masking which we're burdened with and screwed up from.
Yes.
You know, so.
Yes. Yeah. No, I love that explanation. That it's so vital, literally, it's vital for people to know this information. And for you to be going out there and telling that to the world is truly life-changing. So I wanted to ask you, one of the biggest crazes right now is the MTHFR genetic mutation. So speak on that. What can people do if they have that genetic mutation? And because everyone freaks out, but they have no information on how to combat that.
So that's an example of genetics. And what is currently now the best practice is functional genomics. So genetics is like medicine. Try and isolate a problem, diagnose it, and prescribe something against it. Functional medicine is, why did it happen to begin with? What's the root cause? We don't care about the symptom or the disease that you have a name for. What caused it, right? So same thing with MTHFR. There's this isolation of, what does this gene mean? What does this gene mean? The body doesn't work like that. The body is systems and pathways. It's not a 22,000, which is how many genes we have, independent genes doing independent jobs. We already know what the systems look like. So MTHFR is this starring character in a cascade of about 7 or 8 genes that make up what's called your methylation process. What is methylation? In a nutshell, anti-inflammation, right? It's the science is send a methyl group, attach it to a toxin, make it water soluble, pee it out, right? The other thing it does, which we don't talk about so much, is it regulates your gene expression. So your body and your genes constantly responding to every input, environment, nutrition, stress, lack of sleep. Your genes turn the dial on how much work they have to do based on what's going on. Methylation is a process that turns those dials. So if you're not methylating properly, you're not responding properly, you get sick, right? So MTHFR is this one gene and a cascade of all these links in a chain that are working together. So imagine if I show you a chain and I tell you that link is rusty, you don't do it well, but every other link is amazing. Or the opposite, you have the best MTHFR, don't worry about it, and every other link is rusted, right? So now, if your MTHFR is off, you have a variant that's not optimal, you then don't yet know what to do. What you need to do is look at SHMT1. Do I need folic acid or folinic acid? As soon as a woman gets pregnant, go on folic acid. If your SHMT1 is off, you don't metabolize it, you need folinic. Then you look at the MTR and MTRR genes, which come before MTHFR, and what versions of the B vitamins do you need? Do you need B12? Do you need it sublingual? Do you need it in your gut? Do you need what's called methylcobalamin? Do you need adenosine? There's different versions. Which one does your body actually call for? So once you start to get into those nuances, if your MTHFR is off, I can either tell you have an 80% chance of whatever, or I can tell you here's exactly the supplement you need to take in this dose, in this version, in this modality under the tongue, and you'll start to feel amazing.
Wow.
Right? That's the full cascade that's functional, pathway-based, as opposed to this gene, which is hard to action on.
Okay, so with that information, this is how people can interact with the DNA company. So the DNA company will showcase all of your genetic profiling and then what you're susceptible to, and then provide supplement recommendations and the proper doses for someone coming to the DNA Company website?
So the three things that are the sort of epigenetic load on your genetics is environment, nutrition, which includes supplements, like you said, lifestyle.
Okay.
So sometimes there is no supplement required. Sometimes it's you should not be doing cardiovascular exercise. Right?
Wow, okay.
You, as a woman, based on your hormones, should not be intermittent fasting every single day, twice a week max. Right? Somebody else, go ahead and do it every day, based on how your body is going to respond to that habit. But yes, for sure, for most major problems, there are supplementation recommendations because ultimately what we're saying is this gene instructs a job. You have the bad version of the gene, so you're not doing that job so well.
You're right.
So let's now add a supplement to help you do that job better.
Okay.
But let's also remove the load that your body can't handle, and you got to tackle it both ways.
Okay.
Right? That's how you get to that optimal result. And this is true for the way you sleep, your mood, and how you deal with the people around you, major diseases, chronic diseases that you may eventually get, immunity, innate health of the cell, preventing inflammation, hormones, so body type, hair, skin, all of the female hormone issues, which is probably the area that needs the biggest help,
yes.
right? And then, what am I missing here? Diet, nutrition. Should I be keto? Should I be vegan? Those answers are very clear because we know what genes metabolize these different macro and micronutrients. So you can clearly see, here's what my DNA is calling for. If I eat like this, I'm going to thrive.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's like truly hacking into a computer system and just knowing the exact algorithms that you need to properly function and optimize that functioning.
Exactly. It's something as complex as this, 50 trillion cells walking around.
Right.
And we don't read the instruction manual. Right? You buy a microwave, the first you're understanding how this thing works first.
Right.
But it's so complex, all these systems. Something as simple as vitamin D, the 22,000 genes in your body, 2,000 require vitamin D to express properly.
Wow.
So you get that one thing wrong, and 10% of your biochemistry is off.
Gosh.
Right? And we all do this differently. The way we metabolize it from the sun, the way we transport it to the cell, the way we bind it to the cell, we're doing all these jobs a little differently. So these nuances of, brain fog, joint pain, I don't feel right, depressed, anxiety, all this stuff goes away. These are all far off symptoms of this central hub of system failure. So that's what we focus on, this root system failure.
Yeah, well, that's so helpful because so often, the most up and coming thing that we've been recently dealing with is, okay, we found out that vitamin D helps us with our immunity and all of these things. So everyone's just pounding vitamin D now. And it's causing some chaos in certain individuals. And then on top of that, like iron, for instance, I'm anemic. Not just with pregnancy, but both men and women are having anemia show up all of a sudden. And they're taking so much iron, but it's only raising the needle a little bit. So what are the biggest mutations that you see that are contributing to those two things?
So vitamin D is probably the most important of the micros, right? And what we see is that, the standard dose, first of all, there's no such thing as standard, right? It has to be personalized. So step one, there's a gene that takes D2 and converts it to D3, which is the active form you need. So from the sun mostly, and then a little bit from food. And the way we do that is variable. So I might not do a good job, which is basically true of me, by the way, of taking this stuff and putting it in my blood. Now that it's in the blood, and I go to my doctor and they test my blood and say your vitamin D levels are great, I may end there. Right? Meanwhile, there's another gene that transports it from the blood to the cell. Right? You have to get it to the cell to use it. That may not be operating properly. Once it gets to the cell, there's a third gene called the binder, the VDR, that actually binds it. Right? So now in any one of these things, I could be doing well or not so well. Most people don't do well in transport and binding because ancestrally, our great whoever was out in the sun all the time getting a lot of vitamin D, and they actually needed to mitigate and slow down using it because it's toxic potentially. If you can, it's one of the few micronutrients that you can overdose on, and it's toxic, right? And so we developed this genetic ability, which we don't have with other micronutrients, to slow it down. So now, if that's what your profile looks like, wake up and even take your 5,000 IU if you're taking a little bit extra. If you don't transport and bind it properly, you haven't used that 5,000 IU. Right? You probably got 500 or 1,000 of it. So you actually need to dose twice in a day. Right? And now all of a sudden you're going to sleep better because your circadian rhythm is working better. Anxiety is going to go away. That little bit of joint pain that you didn't even know was there is going to be, this is moving a little bit. Inflammation comes down. It fixes everything. So now you start to add in zinc, and you start to add in vitamin C, and you start to add in vitamin A, which we think is just for eye health, but it's also a mood regulator. It's also an antioxidant. There's some people that just never get sick because they're so optimal at the way they metabolize vitamin C. And if you know that, it's not just about fixing what's wrong, but also knowing your superpower. Because if you're an optimal vitamin C metabolizer, it's a potent antioxidant. So use that for anti-aging. High dose vitamin C, because I use it really well. I'm going to use it then. I'm going to take 2,000-3,000 milligrams a day, and that's my antioxidant. That's the thing that keeps my cells young and healthy, right? So it's about knowing what's bad, but also knowing what you do well.
Yeah, it's definitely that twofold. It's the 1-2 punch.
Yeah.
So as far as iron, with is there something similar, a similar mechanism with iron functioning and iron recycling? I know copper is a big thing right now as
what we've seen. So when it comes to minerals and metals, that's the next frontier in functional genomics. So right now, what have we learned? We've learned macronutrients, fat, starches. Should you be a vegan or not? Then we learned micronutrients, and the next wave that's coming is the minerals, right? And the metals. And what we are learning first is how to detoxify the heavy metals and clear yourself of what's negative. Now we're adding the positive. So one really cool thing what we do is that we don't provide a report. It's a digital portal, so that we can keep updating it, and you keep coming back and keep learning. So it's the DNA is one thing that doesn't change. So once you're tested, that's true. The test is permanent. But what do we understand from that data? That continues to improve and improve and improve. So that's a perfect example of come back in 6 months, and you're now going to learn about iron, and you're now going to learn about magnesium, and we keep updating and learning and teaching and learning and teaching.
That's interesting because a lot of things that are happening health-wise is heavy metals and heavy metal toxicity, but there's no real testing for that to see how many metals are in the brain. They'll test through urine or blood, but once it's in the urine or the blood, it's like you're really, really toxic, right? So does the DNA company test for how well you process out heavy metals? That
I would say the most important part of what we do is that innate cellular health. That's where everything starts. Inflammation is the root of everything, right? So the glutathione pathway, there's this unique type of variant that's possible in the glutathione pathway that doesn't happen in the majority of the rest of the genome, called a copy number variation, which means, do I even have the gene? Forget about what version or what quality or whatever. Take me, for example, the GSTM1, which is protective of the gut. So my ability to, first line of defense, block toxins coming along on my food. It might say organic quinoa cookies, but it was still processed on some heavy metal machine that they spray down every day to clean. My gut doesn't block that stuff. And no wonder I was so sick 5 years ago, right? Eating just like everybody else, not understanding what my body does. Well, I'm missing the gene. I don't even have it. My ancestors didn't need it. Food wasn't a threat. Right? So that's also true of when I breathe. So not me particularly, but some people have the not so good version of blocking mold, airborne chemicals, pesticides, everything that comes along in the air today. Now that these things are in the blood, through the lungs or through the gut, there's another gene called GSTT1, which is like this traffic cop that goes around finding this nonsense and sending it to the liver to clear. It's possible to also have a copy number variation there. Don't have the gene, right? So now all of a sudden, somebody who goes and eats sushi twice a week has no problem, but their friend does. Why? Take me, for example. I had to leave my office because I just felt sick and I couldn't understand what was going on. My business partner was the guy that used to drive me home, feeling fine. And I blamed it on the pollution. There's a manufacturing company in the basement of our building. And I said, this must be it. I can smell it. It's chemicals. It's horrible. He's like, why do I don't have a problem? You have a problem. Right? It's innate. It's in you. It's not something causing it.
Right.
And that's when I learned I'm missing the gene. He has an extra copy of it. So he's a hyper detoxer.
Wow.
Yeah, he can drink paint and pee it out. Right?
That's so funny.
Yeah, and this is when we learned that the personalization is key. Like, nobody's born with migraines. Nobody's born with breast cancer. Nobody's born with cholesterolemia. This all happens when you're sort of in your 50s. For me, it started a little earlier because it was extreme. I was sitting on top of this pollution every day, right? So anyways, so that whole environmental health consideration is one of the biggest things that is outside of people's awareness, that is the source of so much today.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Well, yeah. So knowing your genes is helpful in being able to optimize your efficiency for detoxification. And so often we'll have these environmental toxins and people will get so obsessed with, oh, I have to eat organic or else I'm going to get inflamed. I have to do this. I have to avoid fat. So when you know your genes, what are the biggest things that can help support the genes when you're going to be exposed to environmental toxins all day, every day? So for you, what are the specific things that you did to help start combating that effect of the environmental toxins?
So I moved.
Okay, right? There you go.
Quickly.
Yeah.
So keep in mind, I had eczema. I couldn't open my left eye. I had psoriasis where if I went like this and clasped my hands, my knuckles would bleed.
Wow.
I had migraines where I just literally, my business partner driving me home, opened the door and vomit out the door. So the pain was so intense. Gut issues, depression, didn't want to go to work, out of bed. Like, couldn't get out of bed. So anyways, all this stuff, 5 different pills, 5 different doctors, 5 different scans, labeled as all these problems, and nobody would tell me why.
Yeah.
Actually, that wasn't part of their toolkit. They didn't answer that question, right?
No.
So for me, it was understanding the root, which was my detox system is non-existent, right? My method. So first of all, I don't clear the stuff.
Okay.
Second, my ability to fight the inflammation caused by the lack of a detox system is also not the best. My ability to deal with dopamine is slim to none. So the ability to feel pleasure and feel reward, very difficult for me. And so it did express as depression and mood issues, right? Because I was already teetering on that. I just needed some neural inflammation to push me over the edge.
Right.
So I started to remove all of what was a problem and add supplementation and food that was therapeutic in nature, right? So detox stuff like NAC, selenium, alpha-lipoic acid. I started to support my methylation with a sublingual B12, a folinic acid because I don't deal with folic so well.
Okay.
I started to work on my mitochondria and making the cells more robust, the cell's ability to actually be resilient.
Yeah.
Right? So creating cocktails that supported mitochondrial function, dealing with antioxidation. So how do I slow down the effects of aging because I had abused my body so much unknowingly. I didn't know that this was happening, right?
Yeah.
So it didn't take long. Literally a year of this shut eye was gone in 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
literally it progressed. 2 weeks it was gone. The mood, the relief of like, I don't feel bad anymore, couple weeks. The things that take a little longer are hormones, right? You go, especially for females, you have to month after month adjust that cycle, right? For men, it's a little quicker. General fitness, energy, sleep, that all changed also. So it was a mixture of remove all the nonsense, add some good that supports the gaps and holes in my DNA so that I can do those jobs better.
Yeah.
And so I can also cope and do things that I need to do. And here I am. I'm healthier than I've ever been, right?
That's
like these
amazing.
things, I don't have them. I never did. There were things that I did to myself unknowingly and now they're gone. Right?
Well, that's a great perspective because you do feel like a helpless victim when you're experiencing those health expressions and not knowing that you're not broken necessarily. You just have to support it in a much better fashion.
Yep.
So I love the DNA company. I think what you do is amazing.
Oh, thank you.
So for anyone listening who wants to contact you or get connected with the DNA company, where should they go?
So theDNAcompany.com, you can learn there. Our podcast is called Unpilled. If you want to it's designed for our customers to get more value out of the test so they can learn about different problems, but you can learn there also.
Okay.
And yeah, the test is right on the site. There's even coaches and we have programs for, suppose it is something like, I can't lose these last 10 pounds, I'm stuck.
Yes.
Right? Or my mom had breast cancer or ovarian issues, I don't want to go through that. Right? So we have functional genomics certified coaches that can drive through programs and help people with those things. But in the end of the day, the report itself is designed where you should be able to understand it, action it. It's spelled out the way we need it, which is what's wrong and how do I fix it? That's it, right?
Right.
I don't need to know all these fancy genes and all that stuff. Just like, what do I do? That's how we built the reports.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's user-friendly then.
Yeah, for sure.
Good.
Yeah.
So, and what are your social handles?
So me, it's not my full name. It's Kashkhan, so Kashkhan. Can't spell my own name. Official, so Kashkhan Official. Go there. We're also constantly teaching there. So my intention is just to take all of what we learn, like everything we talked about here today, and keep teaching the world that what they think about disease isn't true, right? It's truly optional if you understand why it happens.
Okay.
And so we keep putting news out there also to just anecdotally about different problems. Here's who we helped today. Here's how it worked, and you can do this for yourself.
That's so empowering, especially in today's world where we're hyper-focused on immunity and anti-aging and all those things. So this is a wonderful tool in the toolbox. So thank you for this gift that you're bringing the world.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks.